You're listening to the Femcast podcast, the podcast for women who are truly ready to break free from toxic relationship patterns, choose themselves, and become a magnet for the healthy love they deserve. Let's do this. This podcast is listener discretion advised for mature content and coarse language. Whatever. Hey you guys, what is up and welcome back to the show. I'm so excited and grateful to have you here. We are continuing down the rabbit hole of my 20-year evolution from breaking toxic relationship patterns and becoming a magnet for healthy love. And it was, such a cathartic experience having to go through all this all over again. Like, I can't tell you how many nights I've spent literally living things either in my dreams, like whether consciously or subconsciously, kind of going through like the index cards of memories that have kind of shaped the last 20 years of my life and my healing and my evolution in a lot of these toxic patterns that I used to experience and didn't even realize that they were toxic, because for me they just felt normal. Like, toxic was my norm. And so having to undo all that was literally an evolution over 20 years. And then now being in a position where, okay, we've done the work, we've been there, let's get back out there and, really starting to discover what healthy love actually looks like. And what it is that I truly want in a relationship. That's kind of the evolution that I'm going through right now. So TBD on that. However, what I will say, and what I kind of wanted to talk about today is just this kind of the truth about cheating that nobody talks about, and kind of having gone through this experience, it is quite different in reality from the narrative that we hear so often of what these experiences actually look like. Like, there's a difference between how they're portrayed versus actually being in them and actually moving through them and experiencing them. So we're going to talk about that today. So, as I've been wanting to do with this podcast, wherever you find yourself, if you can safely close your eyes and get centered, please do so. If not, just continue with what you're doing and just hold the intention of what we're about to talk about, and just holding the intention that, if you're listening to this episode, that it will find you and meet you where you are, that you will hear something that you need to hear, shift something that you need to shift, have an awakening that you need to have in order to create more healthy, loving relationship patterns. May this be the seed that helps you kind of break some of your toxic patterns and become a magnet for the healthy love that I truly in my heart believe each and every one of us deserves. You absolutely deserve to experience healthy love that feels safe, love where you feel seen, love where you feel heard, and love where you feel loved just for being you. And that is my intention for each and every one of you listening to this episode today. And so it is. And with that intention, let's dive in. So, the truth about being cheated on that nobody talks about. Let's talk about this because, we've all seen it. I think one of my favorite movies of all time is, I think was it called The Other Woman? The one with, it was Cameron Diaz and she's the other woman. Hang on. Yes. Okay. I had to Google it. So it was The Other Woman. 2014, Cameron Diaz, Leslie Mann, who I freaking love. Like, I am just obsessed with Leslie Mann. Kate Upton, who I'd never seen until this movie, to be honest, but she was hilarious. And Nicki Minaj was also in it. I loved Nicki Minaj's character in this movie. Anyway, great movie about, a woman who's, I really relate to, in this film. Not in, I wasn't exactly, like her in the movie. Leslie Mann. I mean, I think I was probably a little bit more independent than she was. However, having that way that she had this blind faith and blind trust in her husband or partner, I can totally relate to. Like, I can remember, like, I mean, signing papers and documents and never even giving a second thought as to whether or not, I totally trusted my partner. And there was never any doubt in my mind that I couldn't trust him. And so one of the plots in the movie was that, he was giving her these documents to sign, which she didn't understand what they were, and she never really read them. She just kind of signed them away. And sure enough, he was kind of keeping, laundered money in these banks, kind of offshore bank accounts. And he had created all these fake fraud businesses that he had put in her name so that if anything ever went upside down, she would get blamed for it. It was all a whole mess. Anyway, the whole premise of the story is he's cheating on her. She finds out about it because the woman shows up at her front door. She finally puts two and two together. She realizes her spouse is cheating on her. And then she goes through all the stages that I went through, which was like, the denial, the grief, the anger, the rage, and wanting to get back at them and whatever, right? She didn't need the proof though. She had the proof because she had the full confession of the other woman, who was Cameron Diaz. Now, we see this in movies, right? We see this all the time. And this was actually probably the most real, even though it was totally comic, but it was probably the most real, but the real portrayal of betrayal. Usually when we see betrayal in movies, especially in sitcoms, boy meets girl, girl loves boy, they end up in a relationship together, girl finds out boy's cheating, girl leaves boy because she doesn't tolerate that crap, end of story. Move on to the next guy. Cheating, betrayal, infidelity is never that clean. Well, okay, I can't say never. It certainly wasn't that clean in my experience. And in my experience, this comical version was probably the closest thing that came to the real thing. Actually, even that was, I would say was way too clean compared to how I experienced it. Here's the reality. And here's what really nobody talks about. Yes, we're constantly being bombarded with these messages. Oh, if he's once a cheat, always a cheat. If you find out he's cheating, you leave. And there's nothing, nothing to talk about, nothing to negotiate. You simply walk away. You don't tolerate that girl, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Yes. I believe we take a stand for our worth. I believe we treat people how to treat us. I believe what we tolerate, we invite. I believe in all those things. But when it comes to betrayal, when it comes to infidelity, when it comes to cheating, there is such a gray area in all of this. And in terms of what to do, because I think there's different degrees. I hate to say it, and I know a lot of people would agree with me, but I think there's different types of betrayal and different types of infidelity. And I think that, each situation has to be handled differently. I don't think there's a cookie cutter solution to any of this. But what I will say is this, and this is the part that nobody talks about. It is shameful. It is messy. And more often than not, it is something that we don't talk about, that we sweep under the rug, that we try and pretend is not happening, because it's almost as though we've never been given the permission slip to let it be messy. Well, that thought, you guys, we're going to come right back to it. But before we do, let's have a real talk moment here. Are you done with the bare minimum breadcrumb situationship and nonsense that you've been putting up with for as long as you can remember? Are you tired of people who lie, ghost, cheat, and make you question both your sanity and your worth through the entire process? Are you sick of waiting for, chasing, and convincing someone to finally choose you and to be with you? If so, I'm so glad, because that ends right now. Introducing the magnetic love story manifestation method. Wow, that's a mouthful. AKA the shift you didn't even know you needed. Inside this offer, I'm breaking down exactly how to stop hoping for love and start aligning with it. No more overgiving, no more second guessing, no more, maybe if I just love him harder, he'll change. Hell no, that era is officially over. This is about you becoming the woman who is always chosen, because the moment you choose yourself, the most epic love story that you've been waiting for, it shows up. Trust me. So if you are ready to break the cycle and finally step into your magnetic love era, the link is waiting for you in the show notes below. Now let's get back to today's episode. Being in the situation that I was in, knowing in my heart of hearts what was happening behind the scenes, even, not just when I first had that moment of realization, but, going through the anger phase, going through the grief phase, going through the denial phase where I still knew what was going on. I had just decided to not believe myself, not trust myself, and convince myself of a whole other narrative. I knew deep down what the truth was. And I never felt safe telling people what I was experiencing. Because in that experience, depending on who I shared it with, I knew I would get confronted with judgment. You're just being a jealous wife, girlfriend, partner, whatever. I would get confronted with more invalidation and more denial of you're just, you're over exaggerating. He would never do that to you. But you guys are so happy. You guys are like the best couple. And then there's like the internal of all of this, which was, if I admit this, if I admit that this is happening and I admit that this is true, then that confirms what I've always believed deep down that I've never wanted to acknowledge. And that is that I am not good enough. That I am not lovable. That they are always going to love somebody else more than they love me. And that was really the deeper truth in all of this. So when betrayal happens, when infidelity happens, when trust is broken, it is messy as fuck. And to say that, we find out about it, we should immediately leave, that almost rarely happens. I can guarantee you there are, for every woman who's in a relationship out there, I would bet you many of them, if not most of them, have experienced some sort of infidelity or betrayal that they have not talked about, to varying degrees. And men. I mean, it's not just men who cheat, it's women who cheat too. Many will argue that women have more, what's it called? Extra, I want to say, but it's not just for married couples, but, extracurricular relationships than men do. Sometimes they vary. Sometimes they can be sexual in nature. Sometimes they're just emotional in nature. That's also another form of cheating, right? But all that to say, it is messy as fuck. And it is not as easy, to say that we should just walk away from it and never look back and move on. Yes, I mean, I think, I said this in a previous episode, I think, when it comes to betrayal in a relationship, I put them in multiple categories. I mean, there's a betrayal that happens that is literally like a one-off. The person is remorseful. They hate themselves for it. They've come clean about it. They want to work on the relationship. They're owning their mistake and they're owning their part in that mistake, and they want to work through it. I think that, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. We all fumble from time to time. We all let people that we love down. And I think that when somebody's coming at it from that perspective, I think if you choose, not saying you should, but if you choose, I think the relationship can be worked on. Because I think from that perspective, the person is coming into it from a lens of, I fucked up. How can we fix this? How can we make this right? I am willing to do anything to make this right. And I think from that perspective, I think a relationship can always be saved. But when, the person that has committed the infidelity is lying, gaslighting, making you feel like you're the problem, like you're crazy, like you're just a jealous girlfriend, a jealous partner, a jealous wife who's bringing unnecessary drama into the relationship because you're not trusting them. I think that's a different conversation. And I think that is something that ultimately we should be walking away from. But we don't. Why don't we? Okay. We always have to look at the why. Why aren't we walking away? Why are we choosing to stay in these relationships longer than, why are we choosing to take our time to stay in these relationships longer than we need to? Why are we choosing to take longer to leave than we should? And that is because so much of our self-worth is tied into the success of this relationship. And if this relationship were to fail, it would make us see our own unworthiness and not enoughness. It would become the public validation that we were never enough to be loved and begin with. And all our worst fears of abandonment and rejection are now coming true. And they are out in the open. The thought of telling people that he was cheating on me was so I was so embarrassed by it. I was humiliated by the cheating. And I think it's because I felt like other people would look at it as, oh, so you weren't good enough, and so he had to go somewhere else to get his rocks off. Because obviously you were doing something wrong. Obviously you weren't good enough. And that's how I thought people would interpret it. Because in my mind, that's how I was interpreting it. I interpreted his cheating, his betrayal, as, oh my God, I wasn't enough. I wasn't pleasing him. He didn't want to be with me. I wasn't good enough to be with. And this was something that, looking back, this was a belief that started to cement itself long before I realized there was infidelity, because before there was infidelity, there was a distance in our intimacy. That was, considering where we were in our relationship at the time, we had just moved in together. It started before we moved in together. But we had just moved in together, we were both in the prime of our lives, we should have been like, screwing like rabbits around the apartment, but we weren't. We weren't. We were so distant, like months would go by. And it wasn't that I didn't want to, it was that he didn't want to, and he always had an excuse not to. And that for me was so painful. It was, oh my God, he doesn't want me. Oh my God, he's not interested in me. I'm not good enough. I'm not the kind of woman he wants to be with. It was all about me. It had nothing to do with him in my mind. In my mind, it had all to do with me and how lacking I was, how not good enough I was, and what I needed to do in order to be desirable. Because I felt anything but. And I was struggling with this for several months before I found out about the affair. And then after I found out, it just got hella worse. And then even as I was moving through the denial period and I was still trying to pretend that things were okay when they weren't, this was eating away at me slowly. And so, it's not just the betrayal, right? It is everything that we make the betrayal mean about who we are and what we're worth. And oftentimes these narratives come way before the betrayal even shows up. And then it becomes this shameful secret that we hide and tuck under the rug and pray that nobody ever finds out about, because then the world will know just how much we suck as a partner and a lover and a wife or a girlfriend or whatever, that we could not, keep our person faithful. And, this is the thing that nobody ever really fucking talks about, because, we're supposed to be these strong, independent, confident women that, don't need all this external validation, who aren't insecure and who aren't jealous. There's all these rules we need to play by, but inside there's just this vulnerable mess of emotions that we have no safe place to really express. And, making this mean something about what you're worth as a woman and as a human is very real in this process and in this experience. And, until we kind of feel, I think we need to change the narrative when it comes to how we experience these types of relationships and betrayals in our lives, because I think we need to start giving people permission for all the feelings and all the doubts and all the meanings and the associations that we attach to it. It is so messy. It's not clean. It's not clean at all. It's not as simple to say as the moment you find out is that he's cheating is the moment that you leave. It is not that simple. And I think that's a lot of pressure, because we're going to move through self-doubt, uncertainty. We're not sure. We're not clear that, whether or not the cheating happened. Maybe it's a hunch. Maybe we don't have real concrete evidence. Maybe we're denying the concrete evidence. Maybe everything is making it mean something about ourselves that we just don't want to accept. We need to start having conversations just how complex these experiences are, and then really trying to understand how complex the decisions that we make as a result of these experiences. They're not cookie cutter. They are anything but simple. They are messy as fuck, and they will bring up so much of your own internal self-worth issues that I can probably bet you there's a ton of women out there, and maybe you're one of them, who is pretending that the infidelity never happened, who is so desperately trying to hide it because you're afraid of what people are going to think of you and what they're going to say about you behind your back. And that they're going to think, oh, see, it wasn't good enough, so he had to go someplace else to get it. Because that is a very, very real thought that we have when we go through these experiences. So rather than out ourselves and out our experience, we choose to pretend that it never happened and maintain our picture perfect relationship, partnership, marriage, whatever, for the sake of not letting people have the same realization that we are now having about ourselves, which is that we're not enough. So, if you're somebody who has, moved through infidelity, betrayal, you've experienced this, but whether you're trying to deny it or you're idly sitting back and letting the betrayal happen and not acknowledging it and choosing to just kind of sweep it under the rug and pretend that it's not there, I want to ask you to ask yourself, why? What is it that you're hiding? What is it that you're ashamed of? What are you protecting within yourself by keeping this truth hidden? Because let me tell you, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You have not done anything wrong. And this has nothing to do with you not being enough or not being good enough or hot enough or sexy enough or, whatever enough. This is everything to do with a breakdown in your relationship. This is showing you, not to say that this is your fault, but this is showing you maybe some of the beliefs that you hold about yourself that may be attracting unhealthy relationships into your experience. And the beliefs that are being triggered are the very beliefs that you need to look at that are doing the attracting for you on your behalf. Because the first thought that we have, here's how I always like to interpret it. The woman who's self-assured and knows her worth and knows her value can look at the situation and be like, yeah, no, I'm out of here. The woman who struggles to see her worth, struggles to see her value, always struggles to feel like she's enough, will always say, what the fuck did I do wrong? How was I not enough for this person? What didn't they like about me? Why couldn't I please them? Why couldn't I be the kind of woman that they would desire to be with? And that is your first clue as to where your work is to do. And I mean, I know it's not easy work, but let me just tell you, you will thank yourself for doing the work one day. I promise you. Because this is not how love was meant to be experienced. These are the things that help us evolve, certainly. But this isn't the carrot at the end. It's so not the carrot at the end. So, I'm going to leave you with that today. So where are you hiding the mess? Where are you not being honest with yourself or the people around you about owning your own betrayal, your own heartbreak, your own experience with infidelity, and why? And that's the more important question. Why are you not being honest? What is the truth or the belief that you're avoiding by hiding all of this messiness that keeps you going and oscillating between, oh my God, I'm going to leave him. No, I'm going to stay. Oh, I'm going to leave him. Oh, I'm going to stay. No, I'm going to pretend it never happened. No, we're fine. Look, see, we're happy. Because this was my reality for 7 years. So if you are caught in that same reality, what are you not owning and being honest about? And why? What is the feeling or the belief that you're avoiding in that process? Let me know, maria@thefemcoach.com, or you can DM me at @thefemcast and let me know there. If you love this episode, please leave a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're seeing this. Until next time, you guys, massive love.